Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Good evening. It's Tuesday, February 23rd. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Billions of dollars in relief is on its way to Californians, and business is devastated by the pandemic. KPBS reporter Matt Hoffman says some of the aid includes direct payments for low-income residents.
I can't help, along with the speaker, but think about the small businesses back home in San Diego.
State Senator Tony Atkins, representing San Diego, was there as Governor Newsom signed spending bills totaling $7.6 billion in relief for Californians. That, coupled with future tax relief, could bring the total package to around $10 billion.
That's big even by California standards.
Make no mistake, California being in the position to put $10 billion into our economy where we need it the most is something big.
Similar to federal stimulus checks, millions of low-income Californians will get $600 in direct payments. That relief is now being extended to undocumented residents previously not eligible for federal checks. Billions of dollars is also being poured into the state's small business relief program.
$2.075 billion in grants that will start going out, building on the $500 million of grants that have already been going out supporting small business. And I'll remind you, grants, not loans, a profoundly important distinction.
Businesses are also having some fees waived, like those paying annual alcoholic beverage control licenses.
The 59,000 businesses that have ABC licenses, some of those license fees are as much as $1,235. We're waiving those fees not once, but over a 2-year period.
Licensing relief will also benefit barbershops and hair salons. Newsom says this money will keep California going as we work our way out of the pandemic.
The backbone of our economy is small business. We recognize the stress, the strain.
Food banks across the state are also getting a funding boost, and some money is going toward providing diapers for families that need them. $100 million in financial aid is being put up for community college students, and while a deal to reopen grade schools is still being negotiated, money to extend childcare for essential workers through next year is on the way. Funds will also provide stipends for state-subsidized childcare and preschool providers. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
It's the news many families have been waiting to hear. San Diego Unified School District has finally set a date for bringing all of its students back to campuses. KPBS education reporter Joe Hong has the latest.
San Diego Unified School District has announced plans to launch hybrid instruction for all grades beginning April 12th, which will allow students to split their time between virtual and in-person learning. In preparation, the county will start vaccinating district employees this coming Monday. School Board President Richard Barrera said the timeline is contingent on both the staff being vaccinated and San Diego County being out of the purple tier for COVID-19 infection rates.
We know that many parents will make that decision to keep their students home, and we will continue with distance learning for students who are at home. But we will, if we can meet these target dates, we will open it up to in-person learning for all students at all grade levels.
Governor Gavin Newsom said last Friday that beginning in March, California plans to set aside 10% of vaccine doses for educators, school staff, and child care providers. San Diego County Board of Supervisors Chairman Nathan Fletcher released a statement Tuesday morning applauding the district and the teachers union for reaching an agreement on the timeline for hybrid instruction. Barrera said the district will survey parents to get a more accurate sense of how many students will be on campus, which will help district officials determine the details of hybrid instruction. Joe Hong, KPBS News.
The Petco Park vaccination site is back open again after closing for the second time because of delayed vaccine shipments. Now the push begins to catch up on missed appointments. The CDC recommends getting the second shot 21 to 28 days after the first, but it says it can be as late as 42 days. Some people worry their rescheduled appointment is too close to that deadline.
If there are weather incidents like we've just had, and there probably will be more, there's no way really to ensure that the vaccine that's produced is going to get to the places where it can get into the arm.
UC San Diego says its schedulers are aware of the issue, and people who are closest to the end of the 42-day interval get priority for their appointment. San Diego County set a goal to fully vaccinate 70% of the region's population by July. KPBS health reporter Taryn Mento tells us how much progress we've made amid the many supply delays and limitations.
At least 6.7% of the region's population is now fully vaccinated. That's an increase from 2 weeks ago when officials reported only about 2.6% were fully vaccinated. But the region has also seen multiple delayed vaccine shipments this month that temporarily closed down some vaccination sites. Dr. Jeff Goad is a former president of the California Pharmacists Association. He says reaching the 70% goal is key to achieving herd immunity.
And so what we've calculated is we need roughly 75% or greater people to be immune, whether that be through vaccine or through natural immunity, but primarily through vaccination, because we don't want to lose any more lives, of course. So once we get to above 70%, that's generally mathematically the threshold when you start to terminate an outbreak.
But while vaccinations slowly increase, another key metric is declining. That's the rate of new COVID-19 cases per 100,000 San Diegans. More business operations could resume if that figure reaches 7 per 100,000. And some youth sports can begin again if it hits 14. The state announced Tuesday the figure has dropped, but only to 15. Taryn Mento, KPBS News.
And we have more information at kpbs.org. Just click on the Vaccines tab on our homepage and you'll find a searchable map with clinic locations and links to make an appointment if you're eligible. Some breaking news now. A years-long stalemate over short-term home rentals in San Diego appears to be coming to a close. KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen says the City Council just approved regulations for the industry.
Websites like Airbnb and Vrbo have led to a decade-long boom in short-term home rentals. But for years, city officials have been unable to agree on how to regulate them or whether to ban them entirely. City Council President Jen Campbell has proposed a compromise that would issue licenses that could be revoked if the rentals get frequent complaints of noise or illegal activity or for failure to pay hotel taxes.
San Diego's past efforts to regulate short-term rentals have ended in failure. Our neighborhoods have suffered from this failure week after week, but we have learned from that failure and we now have a compromise that is the best way forward.
The ordinance includes 4 license types. The first would cover any type of home that is rented out for fewer than 20 days per year. Tier 2 would cover home sharing, like when you rent out a spare bedroom or a second unit in a duplex. Tier 3 would cover renting out an entire home for more than 20 days per year. And Tier 4 would cover whole home rentals only in Mission Beach. The number of Tier 3 licenses would be capped at 1% of the city's total housing supply. Tier 4 licenses would be capped at 30% of the homes in Mission Beach. Campbell's council district includes Mission Beach, Pacific Beach, and Ocean Beach, neighborhoods with the highest concentration of short-term rentals. Many residents in her district have long advocated for an all-out ban and see her proposal as a betrayal. Elizabeth Getzoff is a resident of Ocean Beach.
I want to have neighbors, not out-of-state owners and vacation rentals, but renters and owners who live in the community, support the schools, the library, and the other things that make our community wonderful and are there when I need them or they need me.
The council's last attempt at regulating short-term rentals failed under opposition from Airbnb and its peers. Those companies and many of the hosts on the platforms now support Campbell's proposal. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
And that proposal passed the City Council in an 8-1 vote. It must come back for a second reading next month for final approval. Javier Becerra, President Biden's pick for health secretary, faces his first day of Senate hearing. He currently serves as California's Attorney General. Today, he was asked about the guidelines for reopening schools and whether they might prevent full in-person learning this year and possibly into next year.
Let science guide us and let the experts determine when it is safe. Remembering that schools and education are a local issue, and where the federal government has a partnership, we provide the guidance. We should not be the ones making the final decision on how and when a school will reopen.
If confirmed, Becerra would be the first Latino to lead the health department. The possibility of violence. That's what law enforcement officials expected on January 6th. But instead, police officers were attacked by an angry mob as insurrectionists stormed the Capitol. Today, the heads of security testified about what went wrong on that deadly day. Emily Schmidt reports from Washington.
Unaware.
I look at this as an intelligence problem that impacted this event.
Unprepared.
We now know that we had the wrong plan.
And overwhelmed.
These criminals came prepared for war.
Those in charge of protecting Congress on January 6th testified to the Senate about security failures during the deadly Capitol attack.
We had planned for the possibility of violence, the possibility of some people being armed, not the possibility of a coordinated military-style attack involving thousands against the Capitol.
The chief of the Capitol Police, who resigned after the riot, said the FBI had information that warned war may be waged on the Capitol. But that message never made it to leadership or the officers on the front lines, some of whom continue to suffer.
I received chemical burns to my face that still have not healed to this day.
Washington's Metro Police Chief also pointed to the Defense Department for not quickly sending in the National Guard.
The response was more focused on, in addition to the plan, the optics. I was just stunned that, I have officers that were out there literally fighting for their lives.
In addition to the colossal communication breakdown, the security officials said some police forces were not trained to handle the magnitude of violence and did not have the proper gear to respond on that deadly day.
The focus going forward needs to be on the efforts to improve intelligence and the coordination of security measures between all involved agencies.
In Washington, Emily Schmidt, KPBS News.
Famed golfer Tiger Woods is seriously hurt after driving off a winding road in Los Angeles County. According to the LA Sheriff's Department, Woods ruled his SUV this morning in the Rancho Palos Verdes area. Firefighters had to use an axe and other tools to break him free from the wreck. Woods suffered leg injuries and underwent surgery. The crash is under investigation. More than a decade ago, the Marine Corps established wounded warrior battalions for Marines with the worst mental and physical injuries. But those battalions aren't addressing one of those troops' most common issues, that Marines who are suicidal or suffer PTSD are still being discharged for misconduct. Here's KPBS military reporter Steve Walsh.
Staff Sergeant Romeo Pactores Jr. has multiple combat tours starting in Iraq in 2004 and later in Helmand Province in Afghanistan when his outpost was attacked from a nearby village.
Firefights, and so when I got back, I noticed that I was not the same.
A few years later, as an instructor, he remembers saving a Marine's life. He says a young Marine threw a live grenade and it bounced back, landing in between them. The Marine froze and Pactores dove on top of him.
What I remember is everything is slow motion. By the time I grabbed that Marine, I really thought I was going to lose my leg.
It's also where he received a traumatic brain injury.
I started getting headaches, really dizzy.
Pactores' 18-year career as a Marine came to an abrupt end after a DUI in Okinawa. Hearing voices, he was hospitalized for suicidal thoughts and flown back to the Naval Hospital in San Diego. He spoke from a Wounded Warrior Battalion at Camp Pendleton as he was fighting to stop the Marine Corps from kicking him out of the service.
And then I feel like, they're just going to try to put me on the streets or with no help.
Christopher Goldsmith says it's a common story. It happened to him.
I was kicked out of the Army in 2007 after surviving a suicide attempt.
Goldsmith has gone on to form Higher Ground, where he advocates for changing the law so that fewer troops get discharged for misconduct in the first place, which affects their veterans' benefits. He says it's still happening as often as it does because it's too easy for commanders to separate service members.
Is because there's no accountability. Officers can, discharge people and ruin their lives by stripping people who are suffering from PTSD from access to health care. And that officer just gets to move on with their life.
Goldsmith says he'd like to change the law so that when commanders kick someone out of the service, it hurts them when they come up for promotion. At Camp Pendleton's Wounded Warrior Battalion, where Pectoris was assigned, the commander won't address individual cases. Lieutenant Colonel Brian Heisman says most of the Marines who end up here are on their way out of the Corps, many voluntarily.
We are aware of legal issues. Of course, we're aware of that as those things are going on, but really our focus is on the medical side.
Heisman is a former infantry officer without a medical background. Wounded Warrior Battalions are Marine units, not medical units. They coordinate treatment and connect with the VA benefit system for those Marines being discharged because of illness or injury. It was Pectoris' commander back in Okinawa who wanted him to be involuntarily discharged for misconduct, even though he's undergoing treatment. At the 11th hour, Pectoris hired a private attorney, Jay Sullivan, to try to stop him from being discharged.
And he cannot do this alone. He needs help. He needs a lot of help because the disorders that he has are permanent, and he will be struggling for the rest of his life. And
Pectoris says it's more than a potential loss of benefits. It's a sense of abandonment.
Yeah, I had my my interview with Sergeant Major and the Lieutenant Colonel yesterday, and then I was just I couldn't control my emotions, so I just started breaking down. And
a few days after this last interview, Staff Sergeant Pectoris texted that his involuntary discharge was final. He had to leave the Wounded Warrior Battalion at Camp Pendleton and head home to Texas, where he faces an uncertain future. Steve Walsh, KPBS News.
Dry weather is in our future right through the week and the weekend, but we do see a fairly strong system coming down over the weekend, which will bring some significant cooling here, especially on Sunday. Before then, we have a wind event coming at us Wednesday night into Thursday, a little burst of the Santa Ana. As we check out temperatures tonight, San Diego down to 50 degrees. El Cajon 45 in Ramona dips down to 39. 52 Borrego Springs and 39 in Campo. Oceanside around 43. Looking at Wednesday's weather, well, we should see comfortable readings here. And we'll see some clouds giving way to some sunshine at the coastal areas. Forecast highs, Oceanside 66. San Diego's at 68. Keep in mind, morning hours kind of gray out there. And there you can see Escondido, Ramona at 74 and 78 here in El Cajon. Borrego Springs cracks 80 up to 83. Mount Laguna at 53 with sunshine. Now Wednesday night and Thursday, we see a wind event coming at us. Strong winds will be coming in from the northeastern. Those winds could gust 40 to 60 miles an hour, especially troublesome through the canyons and the passes. Looking at our temperatures, well, they'll be mild right into Thursday. And then for the weekend, you can see how it starts to cool off just a little bit, especially so on Sunday. Here in the inland sections, well, plenty of sunshine. Look at Friday's high, and then we start to cool off down in the low 60s on Sunday. Here in the mountains, strong gusty winds and cool breezes. By the weekend, it's chilly on Sunday. And even the deserts, we'll see the temperatures dropping off big time into the 50s on Sunday. And for KPBS News, I'm meteorologist Mark Mancuso.
San Diegans are used to seeing wetsuits on surfers and scuba divers, but have you ever seen one on a turtle? KPBS reporter John Carroll gives us a look at some innovative therapy being used at a South Bay Wildlife Center.
The Living Coast Discovery Center in Chula Vista is home to all sorts of birds and marine life. Some have been injured in the wild and are brought to the center for treatment and recovery. Others can't return to the wild and live their lives out at the center. Such is the case with Sapphire. When we arrived this morning, the 200-pound loggerhead turtle was taking a nap, head down, tail up. That is, until animal care specialist Ayanna Reisman showed up with some fresh smelt and squid. It's a diet Sapphire has become accustomed to since coming here to live in 2014. She came from Florida, where she'd been hit twice by boats. She lost sight in one eye, and one of her flippers is partially paralyzed, but she recovered and had been doing fine. Then, in April of last year, staff here started noticing that Sapphire was having buoyancy problems, not just in the way you might think, coming up for air, but also being able to stay down in the water where she feeds, and as you can see, where she sleeps.
She wasn't comfortable, and that's where we saw the decrease in appetite and overall quality of life when we wanted to make sure that she was comfortable and exhibiting those natural behaviors.
The challenge was to help Sapphire regain control of her buoyancy. She already had weights glued onto her shell, but the part of her body where her buoyancy comes from shifts, so the weights can only do so much. Reisman had an idea, a wetsuit where weights could be added as needed. The idea started out with these little prototypes used on a small turtle, then this blue one with a pocket sewn on. Fortunately, Reisman knew some people at the O'Neill Wetsuit Company in Santa Cruz who were happy to help make a custom wetsuit, allowing for much more targeted therapy.
The most important part are these little pockets where we can actually put the weights in. It's a nice snug fit, just like it would be for us to stay close to her body and kind of simulate what it would be like if we were to glue weights closer. And that helps us down the line figure out where we may need to put a permanent weight in the future.
During her wetsuit therapy, Sapphire was moved into this shallow pool to make it easier to get her in and out of the wetsuit. They are, of course, keeping the wetsuit should she need more therapy down the line, but things have gone so well that she has returned to the big pool, where she's now back to swimming, eating, and, of course, napping. Content, one hopes, with her life here at the Living Coast Discovery Center. John Carroll, KPBS News.
Since live performances are still not allowed, La Jolla Playhouse continues to release new digital WOW or Without Walls shows online. KPBS arts reporter Beth Accomando has a look at the latest offering.
La Jolla Playhouse's Spittin' Truth to Power While Light Leaping for the People offers a perfect way to close out Black History Month.
It's a three-part intergenerational musical poem that is the yin and the yang, that is the ancient and the new, the male and the female. It is an intergenerational piece that was created by two artists, Elise Smith Cooper, who is an octogenarian, and Shami D, who is a millennial.
Chacole Kitchen is one of the producers of Spittin' Truth to Power, which uses images, music, and spoken word in the West African tradition of griot.
It's a West African tradition of storytelling, but the oral storytelling, of carrying on our history through oral storytelling and through music, because it's the music and the words that are carrying on this history. As you'll see in the first piece, the sermon, it really is a look back at what we have overcome, the history of African Americans in this country.
We live to erase the seed of racism, blind to our common creation. We are the agency of abolition.
Octogenarian poet Elise Smith Cooper wanted to address an intergenerational connection, and she felt hip-hop could help.
Hip-hop, this music, putting it to music is a way to get folks to listen to the story of their history. So that's part one, the sermon. The second part is literally a prayer. It's a prayer for justice. It's a prayer for resolution. It's a prayer for resurrection.
Please watch over the families whose children have passed.
The third part is a coming together, a following of the ancestors, and realizing that we just have to listen to our history. We have to feel the power of the path that the ancestors have laid for us.
They plan to manipulate us.
We approached this project like a film versus a piece of theater. I felt like we had gone back to work, you know, for just a brief moment. I felt like we were doing what we do again instead of being in front of the screen.
The Playhouse wants to connect with its virtual audience, so it's inviting people to take the Sermon Challenge.
The sermon ignites the history and the passion and what we need in order to move forward. And so what we're asking people to do is respond to that. What does that ignite in you?
The Playhouse will even provide you with Shammy D's music to create your own version of the sermon video.
It's such a beautiful piece. All 3 parts all together are 9 minutes. It will be the most powerful 9 minutes of your year thus far, I can guarantee you.
So find 9 minutes and get inspired. Beth Accomando, KPBS News.
And here's another look at today's top stories. Governor Newsom signed off on more than $7.5 billion in direct relief for Californians. Similar to federal stimulus checks, 5.7 million low-income Californians will get $600 payments. And $2 billion is being poured into the state's Small Businesses Relief Grant Program. And San Diego Unified School District plans to launch hybrid instruction for all grades beginning April 12th. That means students have the option to split their time between virtual and in-person learning. The school board president says the timeline is contingent on staff being vaccinated and the county being out of the purple tier for COVID-19 infection rates. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Have a great evening.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.